Hello, everybody. My name is Benjamin, and I'm from the German Aerospace Center. I'm part of I'm representative for the Global Seagrass Watch project. What we are doing is to map seagrasses using Google Earth Engine. And for today, my presentation will present our achievements, which are mostly done on Google Earth Engine. And what we want to do is to show how Google Earth Engine is able to help us achieve not only scientific products, but also products that can be used by the management and by the policymakers, which I'll be sharing later. I'm not part of Google, and whatever I'm saying is not meant to just promote Google Earth Engine in general. But I do have to declare that this project is sponsored by Geo and by for Google as well. So now that we have the conflict of interest out, um, we can begin with the presentation. Our habitat of interest for today is seagrass. So seagrasses are very special habitats. Uh, they might look very like just grass, like weeds, for example, but they provide many ecosystem services. In particular, they provide coastal protection to at least more than 1 million people. About 20% of the world global fishes are dependent on seagrass habitats, and about 18% of the oceanic blue carbon are sequestered by seagrasses. And yet, these very important habitats, are facing widespread losses over the past century. So this was reported by Michelle Waycott back in 2009. And based on just known data set at that point in time, as you can see, there's quite a bit of missing data from Africa, from Asia, and so on and so forth. There's already been a very large decline in seagrasses. And about 10 years later, in about 2021, an updated paper shows that the seagrass habitats are still facing global losses in many different regions. So the thing is, there is still a silver lining for this. At least these 10 countries in the world that we have highlighted, right now they have introduced seagrasses tree conservation, and they have included seagrasses in their nationally determined contributions, which means that they will protect this habitat, and this is a good news. By the long run, we really hope that other countries pick that up. And how do we get them to bring this into their NDCs? You have to map the seagrasses and you give it to them, and this is exactly what we are doing. So the Global Seagrass Watch tries to harvest the Earth observation potential, the Google Earth Engine, in order to map seagrasses and to provide this kind of information for the policymakers. And as I was mentioning, not only do we just provide the seagrass extent, we go a step further to try to account for the seagrass ecosystem services so that it is more useful for them. They can think about it in economic terms, in whatsoever terms they need to, in order to achieve the aim to conserve these very important habitats. So our general framework, as I was mentioning, we use Google Earth Engine. We use the dataset in Google Earth Engine, in particular Sentinel-2 and NICFI dataset. We use the functions in Google Earth Engine, and we use the reference data that has been collected by our collaborators, as well as some expert knowledge and annotated data sets by both our collaborators as well as us. And what we do get as an output is a seagrass map, especially explicit seagrass map that could be used by the collaborators to know where the seagrasses are, how is it like, and to check them out. And then, taking this extent map, we combine with existing information about blue carbon stock. And then by merging data set, we're able to give an evaluation of this is the amount of blue carbon, the cost or the value of the blue carbon based on this data set. And finally, right now we are trying to introduce and include uncertainty and probabilities in order to improve this prediction of our extent and of our ecosystem services, to make it more valuable for the policymaker, so that the number is not just a number and you just plug and play, but you have some level of error, and you know which are the places that you can trust more, which are the places that we still need to work more. We have started since in 2019, 2020. Ever since then, we have mapped 28 different countries, covering over 300,000 km square worth of shallow seabed areas, and mapping almost 80,000 seagrasses, covering about 40% of the less available global extent. And these are the 5 regions that we'll be working on. The first three regions, the regions with the Sentinel-2, are the regions that was previously that been completed, and the last two, the Indonesian and the Seychelles data projects, are current existing projects. And as you can see, we have been using very different data sets, like Sentinel-2 for the top three data set, NICFI for the current data set, and exploiting different the random forest function for our work. One thing that we like to point out is that if not for the fact of having such a very powerful cloud platform, like as well as all the servers and all the computing power, we won't be able to use about almost 300,000 worth of images for the Mediterranean Sea, for example. It wouldn't be feasible, or even if it would, it wouldn't be done in like 2 years or 1 year. That was the amount of time that we have done, and it's something that we love. We also like to highlight that this platform has enabled us to be able to produce such very, very important and interesting work. So I've mentioned we have covered the pan-Mediterranean seagrasses, where we mapped more than 23 countries. So what differs this? So this project started off as a national mapping scale of a national mapping project for Greece, nationwide, and then we had to expand it out to the whole Mediterranean Sea. And the reason why this is important is that even though we have lots of collaborators around the whole Mediterranean Sea, there are still places, there are still countries where we still have a lack of data set and gaps and all this, and we have no choice but to use whatever we have to extrapolate, to map the seagrasses in places. And this is the best possible map that we have as of now. If you're interested, please feel free to scan the QR code. This is the app viewer that allows you to view the data set. If you wish to download the data set, we have submitted this to the Ocean Data Viewer in UNEP, and it should be out soon. We just need to check with the final processing, and yeah, please feel free to use our data set for whatsoever needs that you need. In the next region that we covered, this East African region, this differs from our, this is done by my colleague Avi. Again, the QR code is there for you to scan her work. She has built on the work that we have done for the Mediterranean Sea, which I've done. So what I've done previously, which I didn't share, was that we tried a soft probability or a per pixel-based probability that was available on Google Earth Engine to map the seagrass extent. So what Avi has done was to introduce a turbidity processor by trying to identify turbid areas which we cannot classify, to remove them and mask them out, to increase the accuracy of our maps, and then to use a two-tiered soft probability in order to increase the accuracy of her maps. And in addition to just mapping seagrasses, as you can see in the middle, this is the satellite-derived bathymetry. So Avi has also done satellite-derived bathymetry with the NASA using the ISAT tool, and again, everything is done in Google Earth Engine to map bathymetry and whatsoever not. And it's a very, very interesting project. So if you are keen, please look at our papers as well and look at our work. And the final region that I will show you today is the Bahamian region. So this is done by our master's student and then our research assistant, Elena Bloomer. She has mapped the Bahamian seagrasses, as you can see here, from the L2A composite, and it took quite a bit of time. What she has done for us is just to try very different techniques, which is to normalize the training and validated data set. And what this does is to remove away the anomalous points that you usually get when you try to sample the data set from the map. And by reducing this anomalous points, you'll get the more regular points put inside the model, and you try to transfer the model. This would naturally increase the accuracy of, or at least reduce the effects of the extreme points on the model, so that it's not skewed by such values. Like this. And in addition to that, she also did a minimum maximum extent of seagrasses, which a maximum extent was based on the hard classification, and then of at least 20 different models, which we then take an ensemble of the top 3 models. And the minimum extent was used a soft probability at thresholding, and then she did again the top three ensemble model, the top 3 seagrass models that you get from the data set. And you can look at her work. Feel free to look at her data set, which can be seen in the QR code. The paper is currently in manuscript, and it's slated to be out soon. So this is our current project. We are currently working with the Seychelles government. We have mapped out the seagrass of Seychelles, and this is actually the first actionable nationwide seagrass mapping. And the government, the Seychelles government, will take this map and they will introduce this into their national climate and MPA agenda, so that all this can be done in order to bring up the importance of seagrasses as for conservation purposes. And this is something that we are very, really proud of. The poster will be held tomorrow on Thursday at 10 in the morning. So if you are interested to learn more about how we classify this area and what are the steps that we need to do, and what are the current methods that we're taking to try to improve the classification, feel free to look for me at the poster booth tomorrow. Most of our work is based on this coding work, which has been published in this book, Cloud-Based Remote Sensing and Google Earth Engine. The contribution of the chapter for the benthic habitats is done by Spiros Christophilakis, who is also one of our members, our team members. And this, if you're interested to know how we work and what are the codes that we use, is pretty much not very far off from this data set. So feel free to look at this chapter and you should be able to replicate what we have done as well. Of course, not everything is perfect. Even the Google Earth Engine, there are still things that we need to work better and improve as we go on. So one of the things that we do is, as you have noticed, we have mapped quite a lot of the shallow seagrasses. But seagrasses extend beyond just the shallower areas. And even if there's a physical limit to how deep we can see, it does not mean that we should give up on the deeper seagrasses, which are between the optically deep waters and the shallow waters. And right now, we are trying our best to try to map these deep seagrasses and then account for them inside the the NDCs as well. There's also the issue that sometimes there's a lack of big data fusion and fit for purpose data for seagrass habitat on its own. So right now we're adapting all these codes, like the previous benthic habitat code that we have showed you, but it will still require certain changes, adapt to the different, like for the seagrasses versus corals versus the algae and whatsoever, for example. And this is something that we are always fine-tuning in order to improve our classification. When we come to large scale or spatial mapping, or even multi-temporal composite, there's a very so this is not Google Earth Engine per se, but just the data set in general, because this is the image capture from Sentinel-2, for example. And because of different flight path, different flight dates, and whatsoever not, it is natural to have this kind of patterns involved. And we are still in the midst of trying to improve our pre-processing in order to standardize and normalize all this kind of issues, because just a slight difference. So one thing I didn't share is that aquatic remote sensing is pretty different from terrestrial remote sensing. It's estimated that for aquatic remote sensing, we use only about 10% of the reflectance values as compared to terrestrial remote sensing, and hence all these kind of minor errors are amplified when you work with aquatic ecosystems. And of course, we will naturally still want to do our best to normalize this so we can reduce this kind of errors. There's also a lack of nation or region specific accounting, as you can see, like we have previously shown just about 10 countries, and now Seychelles is joining the fray. And with our work, with our data set on a large scale, in a very, very cost-effective manner, we would like to encourage the countries to engage with us or with anybody else to map the seagrasses and then put them inside their NDC so that we can conserve these very, very important habitats. And finally, so the tracking of seagrasses is also an issue both in terms of the science and in terms of the agreement, because there are many, many indicators for coral reef, for example, when it comes to this kind of environmental agreements, but not so much for seagrasses. And we hope that as the science mature and improve for seagrasses, for example, the implementation of change detection in our work somewhere soon, the relevant indicators will also be included inside these agreements and for the conservation of seagrasses. Into the future, what we are doing and what we are still continuing doing is to develop a systems level approach by fusing the Earth observation data set and Earth observation science with the ecosystem accounting science, as well as in the future as well the biome physical models, to produce a product that is useful for management and for policymakers in general. In order to do this, we're collaborating with scientists from different fields in order to better merge our data sets, as well as to get field reference data, because we need collaborators. There are areas where we do not have seagrass data set, and if any one of you is keen to collaborate us to work on this, feel free to contact us. And finally, whatever product that we do, if we do not work with policymakers, and as well to account for the uncertainty so that policymakers know that our products are useful or at least reliable to a certain extent, then it might be tricky for them to adopt the dataset, or they might just look at it and they might do something else with it, or at the very least with the uncertainty that we are currently working on. This is something we hope to give the policymakers. Okay. And of course, working with the government and all this, the more pragmatic way, as I've previously mentioned, we can do all the science in the world, but it is not adapted, it's not used, the science is not done. So, thank you very much for listening to my talk all the way to the end. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask or to contact me at my email here. We have our LinkedIn page here if you wish to follow us. And for AGU, in particular, the work of my colleague Spiros on his the accounting of spatially explicit uncertainty by pixel level. His poster is here, this URL here. Unfortunately, his session was yesterday evening, but feel free to contact him if you want to learn more about spatially explicit uncertainty. And my poster will be held tomorrow morning. This is the URL. Feel free to have a look as well. Thank you very much.